Frieren'S saddest secret changes everything. What if Frieren'S greatest regret isn't Himmel's death? What if the real tragedy of Frieren has been hidden in plain sight since the very first episode? At first glance, Frieren, Beyond Journey's End appears to be a story about loss. A story about an elf who outlives everyone she cares about. A story about learning to value people before it's too late. And while all of those things are true, they may not be the heart of the story. Because the deeper you look into Frieren, the more you realize that the series isn't actually about death. It's about time. More specifically, it's about what happens when someone has too much of it. For humans, time is precious because it is limited. Every moment matters. Every year matters. Every goodbye matters. Humans understand this instinctively because they know their lives are short. Frieren doesn't. At least, she didn't. For most of her life, decades felt like days. Years felt insignificant. Entire human lifetimes passed before she even noticed. When Himmel and the hero party defeated the Demon King, Frieren thought their adventure was only a small chapter of her life. To Himmel, it was everything. Those 10 years represented the most important period he would ever experience. To Frieren, it felt almost insignificant. And that's where the tragedy begins. Not when Himmel dies, but long before that. The true tragedy is that Frieren didn't understand the value of those moments while she was living them. When she attends Himmel's funeral, something changes. For the first time, she cries. Not because she suddenly misses him, not because she suddenly loves him, but because she realizes she never truly knew him at all. Think about that for a moment. She spent 10 years traveling beside Himmel, fighting beside him, eating beside him, laughing beside him. And yet she barely understood the person standing next to her. That realization breaks her. Most people assume the story begins at Himmel's funeral. I think the story actually begins with Frieren discovering her greatest failure. She spent centuries collecting magical knowledge, yet she never learned how to understand people. And that's why her journey starts. Not to defeat an enemy, not to save the world, but to understand the people she lost. The genius of Frieren is that the series constantly reminds us of this idea. Every town she visits contains traces of the past. Every memory reveals something she overlooked. Every flashback shows another moment she failed to appreciate. The audience experiences these revelations alongside her. We slowly realize that Himmel was far more important than Frieren understood. Not because he was strong, not because he was famous, but because he valued every moment they shared. One of the most fascinating aspects of the story is Himmel himself. For years, fans have debated whether Himmel loved Frieren. The answer seems obvious. Of course he did. The real question is why? Why would a human hero fall in love with someone who could never fully understand him? Someone who would likely outlive him by thousands of years. Someone who barely recognized his feelings. The answer reveals one of the deepest themes in the series. Himmel never loved Frieren because he expected something in return. He loved her because that's who he was. He saw beauty in moments. He understood the value of limited time. He knew their lives would be different. And he accepted that reality. In many ways, Himmel represents the exact opposite of Frieren. He understands the importance of endings. She doesn't. At least not initially. That's why their relationship is so powerful. They aren't simply two characters. They are two completely different ways of viewing life. One sees time as infinite. The other sees time as precious. And throughout the series, Frieren slowly begins adopting Himmel's perspective. That's the real character development. Not becoming stronger. Not learning new magic. Learning how to value time itself. But here's where things become even more interesting. Many fans believe Frieren's journey is about moving on from Himmel. I think they're completely wrong. Frieren is not trying to move on. She's trying to move closer. Every step she takes is bringing her closer to understanding who Himmel really was. Every memory reveals something she missed. Every encounter teaches her another lesson about human nature. The goal isn't forgetting Himmel. The goal is finally understanding him. And that's why the story feels so emotional. Most stories about grief focus on letting go. Frieren focuses on understanding. It's a subtle difference, but it changes everything. Because understanding someone after they're gone creates a unique kind of sadness. You finally learn who they were, but they're no longer there to hear it. Imagine realizing years later that someone loved you deeply. Imagine finally understanding everything they tried to tell you. Imagine recognizing all the moments you ignored. Now imagine it's too late to respond. That's the emotional core of Frieren, and it may be the saddest concept in modern anime. But there's another secret hidden beneath the surface. A secret that could completely redefine the entire story. What if Himmel isn't actually the most important person in Frieren's journey? What if the most important person is Frieren herself? For centuries, Frieren remained emotionally frozen. The world changed around her. Civilizations rose and fell. Generations lived and died. Yet she barely changed. She collected spells. She gathered knowledge. But she remained fundamentally the same person. The hero party changed that. Not because they defeated the Demon King. Because they forced Frieren to grow. For the first time, she formed genuine connections. For the first time, she experienced friendship. For the first time, she began understanding what it means to care. The tragedy is that she realized all of this too late. Or at least she believes she did. But what if she's wrong? What if the entire purpose of her journey is proving that it's never too late to change? That idea appears repeatedly throughout the series. Again and again, Frieren discovers new aspects of humanity. Again and again, she forms deeper relationships. Again and again, she becomes more emotionally open. The person we see today is already completely different from the elf we met in the first episode. And that's what makes her story so powerful. Because change is difficult, especially when you've lived for centuries. Most people struggle to change after a few years. Frieren is attempting to change after 1,000. And somehow she's succeeding. That brings us to Fern. Many viewers focus entirely on Himmel. But Fern may be equally important. Because Fern represents Frieren's future. Himmel represents her past. Fern represents the relationships she still has time to protect. The lessons she failed to learn with Himmel are now being applied in real time. For perhaps the first time in her life, Frieren is paying attention. She notices emotions. She notices feelings. She notices the small moments she once ignored. She's becoming the person she wishes she had been long ago. And that's why Fern matters so much. She's proof that Frieren's growth is real. She's proof that people can change. No matter how old they are. No matter how much regret they carry. No matter how many mistakes they've made. But the story may still be building towards something even bigger. Consider the title, Beyond Journey's End. Most fans interpret this literally. The adventure ended. The Demon King was defeated. The heroes won. But what if the title has a deeper meaning? What if the real journey begins after the ending? Most fantasy stories stop when the villain is defeated. Frieren starts there. Most heroes celebrate victory. Frieren examines what comes next. Most stories ask how to save the world. Frieren asks how to live after you've already done it. That's a far more difficult question. And it's one that many people never answer. What gives life meaning after your greatest achievement? What happens when the adventure is over? What happens when the people who defined your life disappear? What happens when all that's left are memories? Those questions are at the heart of Frieren, and they become more powerful with every episode. This is why I believe Frieren's saddest secret changes everything. The story was never about losing Himmel. It was about understanding him. It was never about death. It was about time. It was never about the end of an adventure. It was about discovering what comes after. And most importantly, it was never about regret. It was about growth. Frieren cannot change the past. She cannot bring Himmel back. She cannot relive those lost moments. But she can become someone who appreciates the moments she still has. Someone who understands people more deeply. Someone who values connections before they're gone. That may be the true message of the series. Not that life is short, but that every moment becomes precious once you realize it won't last forever. For humans, that lesson comes naturally. For Frieren, it took 1,000 years. And perhaps that's why her journey resonates with so many people. Because in one way or another, everyone has a Himmel. Someone they wish they had understood better. Someone they wish they had appreciated more. Someone they wish they had spent a little more time with. Frieren simply takes that universal feeling and turns it into one of the most beautiful stories modern anime has ever told. And if the series continues exploring these themes, its greatest moments may still be ahead of us. Because Frieren's journey isn't really about reaching a destination. It's about learning how to cherish the people walking beside her before the road finally ends.